I spent 35 years believing I wasn't good enough for my own mother, but I never imagined she would humiliate me in front of 50 strangers just to impress her future daughter-in-law. The engagement party was beautiful. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, and my mother glowing at the microphone, basking in applause as she praised my brother's success. Then her eyes found me. "Look," she announced, her voice dripping with theatrical pity. My failure of a child actually showed up. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The bride smirked, not even bothering to hide it. My brother stared at his shoes. I felt 50 pairs of eyes dissecting me, the disappointing daughter, the family embarrassment, the cautionary tale. But here's what no one knew. I had spent the last 18 months uncovering a secret my mother had buried for over a decade. A secret so devastating that it would destroy her precious reputation in a single evening. So when the police walked through those doors 20 minutes later, I was the only person in that room who wasn't surprised. Have you ever been publicly shamed by someone who was supposed to protect you? My name is Erica Mills. I'm 35 years old, a senior financial analyst at a Fortune 500 company, earning more money than my mother ever believed I was capable of making. But to my family, I'm still the receptionist who answers phones at a small accounting firm, a lie. I stopped correcting years ago because the truth only ever made things worse. 2 hours before I walked into that engagement party, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, applying lipstick with steady hands. Most people would have been nervous. I was calm. When you've spent 18 months preparing for a single evening, nerves become a luxury you can't afford. My mother, Gloria Mills, had spent my entire childhood teaching me one lesson: I would never be enough. When I was 17, she emptied my college fund money. My grandmother had left specifically for my education, so my younger brother, Mark, could attend a private high school. "Mark has potential," she told me, as if the words didn't cut. "You'll figure something out." I did figure something out. I worked 2 jobs while putting myself through night school. I earned my degree in accounting, then my certification as a financial analyst. I built a career that would have made any mother proud, any mother except mine. So I stopped telling her. I let her believe I was still struggling, still the failure she needed me to be. It was easier than watching her twist my success into evidence of my arrogance. For years, I kept my distance. Holiday dinners I couldn't avoid. Brief phone calls I ended as quickly as possible. The engagement party invitation was the first time in 2 years my mother had asked me to attend anything. I should have known something was wrong. 18 months ago, I applied for a mortgage. A simple thing. I wanted to buy a small house, something of my own. The bank pulled my full credit history, and that's when I saw them. 3 investment accounts. I never opened a $400,000 mortgage on a property I'd never seen. All in my name, all tied to my social security number. And the contact address for every single account was my mother's house. I didn't confront her. I did what I've been trained to do. I gathered evidence. I traced every transaction documented, every forged signature mapped, every lie. Then I contacted the FBI. The investigation revealed more than I expected. My mother hadn't just stolen from me. She'd been running this scheme for 12 years, targeting me and 2 elderly relatives who trusted her to help manage their finances. Total fraud, $1.2 million. But the worst discovery came 3 weeks ago. While reviewing bank records with my FBI contact, I found something that made my stomach turn. Gloria had already contacted a new lender. She'd already filled out a loan application, $300,000 in my name, with an appointment scheduled for Monday to finalize everything. The loan was for a house, a wedding gift for Mark and his fiancée Amanda. She was going to steal from me again, and she had no idea I knew. The FBI planned to arrest her Monday morning. I could have simply waited, let the law handle everything quietly, privately, away from public view. But I needed something the courts couldn't give me. I needed the people who had laughed at me, who had whispered about what a disappointment I was, who had watched my mother mock me for 35 years. I needed them to see the truth. I needed to reclaim my dignity in the same room where it had been stripped away so many times before. I checked my purse one last time. Phone fully charged. Copies of every fraudulent document ready. The FBI's number saved but unnecessary. They would handle their part on Monday. Tonight was about something else entirely. My mother thought she was inviting a fool to a celebration. She had no idea she was inviting the woman who would tear down everything she'd built, brick by careful brick, lie by careful lie, in front of everyone she'd ever tried to impress. The restaurant was more elegant than I expected. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting soft light across white tablecloths and polished silverware. 50 guests filled the private room, their laughter and conversation blending into a low hum of celebration. This was the kind of venue that charged more for a single evening than most people earned in a month. I wondered how much of my stolen money had paid for it. I spotted the hierarchy immediately. Amanda Townsend's family occupied the head table, positioned directly beneath the largest chandelier, like royalty holding court. Her father, Richard Townsend, sat with the rigid posture of a man accustomed to authority. He had served as a federal judge for over 2 decades before retiring. Her mother, Patricia, had spent 12 years on the city council. They carried themselves with the quiet confidence of people who had never been forced to prove their worth to anyone. My table was near the kitchen entrance, as far from the center of attention as physically possible. I sat with distant relatives I barely recognized, people whose names I had forgotten and who clearly had no interest in remembering mine. The message was clear: I was present, but unimportant, invited, but not welcomed. Gloria made her rounds, introducing guests with the practiced charm of a woman who had spent her life perfecting appearances. When she reached the Townsends, her voice swelled with pride. And this is my son, Mark, the real estate developer. His company just closed a major deal last month. We're so proud of everything he's accomplished. Mark stood beside her, accepting handshakes and congratulations, with the easy confidence of someone who believed he deserved them. Then Gloria's gaze swept toward my table, and her enthusiasm dimmed like a light being turned down. "And that's my daughter," she said, waving vaguely in my direction. "She works in an office somewhere." No name, no details, just a dismissive gesture and an immediate return to more interesting conversations. I watched my brother from across the room. His designer suit probably cost more than my first car. His watch caught the light every time he gestured a flashy piece that screamed success to anyone paying attention. The confidence in his voice, the way he laughed at jokes and clapped men on the shoulder like they were old friends, none of it matched the Mark I remembered. The Mark I knew had struggled through community college, had bounced between jobs, had borrowed money from our mother more times than I could count. But I knew the truth now. That watch, that suit, that confidence, all of it was built on stolen money. His major deal was nothing more than a desperate attempt to keep a failing business afloat. The real estate company that Gloria bragged about was hemorrhaging cash propped up by funds that belonged to me and to 2 elderly relatives who had trusted the wrong person. I understood something then, something that had eluded me for 35 years. Gloria had never believed I was worthless. She had needed me to appear worthless. Every insult, every dismissal, every public comparison that left me looking like the family disappointment, it was all deliberate. She needed a failure standing next to Mark so his manufactured success would shine brighter by contrast. I was never inadequate. I was strategically diminished. The realization should have made me angry. Instead, it made me calm. Everything was starting to make sense. Amanda Townsend approached my table with a champagne glass in hand, her smile perfectly calibrated to convey politeness without warmth. She was beautiful in the way that expensive maintenance creates every detail attended to with precision. Her blonde hair fell in careful waves, her dress hugged her figure without a single wrinkle, and the engagement ring on her finger caught the light like a small sun, 3 carats of princess-cut diamond that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. I recognized that ring. Not the design, but the price. It matched a withdrawal from one of the fraudulent accounts almost exactly. "So you're the mysterious sister," Amanda said, her tone suggesting that mysterious was not a compliment. "Gloria talks about you sometimes." The way she said it made clear that those conversations had not been flattering. "Still single at 35, don't worry. Some women are just meant for other things." I smiled the kind of smile that gave nothing away. "Congratulations on your engagement. I hope you both get exactly what you deserve." Something flickered in her eyes, a moment of uncertainty, as if she sensed a meaning beneath my words that she could not quite grasp. Then she recovered her composure, nodded once, and walked away without looking back. I returned my attention to the room, watching the performance unfold around me. Guests congratulated Mark on his business success. They praised Gloria for raising such an accomplished son. They admired Amanda's ring and speculated about the wedding plans. No one questioned the source of the money. No one wondered how a struggling real estate developer could afford such lavish displays. They saw what they wanted to see, and Gloria had spent years making sure that was all they would ever see. The clinking of metal against glass silenced the room. Gloria stood at the head table, microphone in hand, her face glowing with the particular satisfaction of a woman who believed she had won. "I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate Mark and Amanda's love," she began, her voice carrying warmth and humor in equal measure. "You know, when Mark was young, I always knew he would do great things. He had that fire, that determination." She paused, and her gaze found me across the room. Not everyone in a family is blessed with the same gifts. Some children you have to push forward. Others— She shrugged, her smile turning sympathetic in a way that somehow made the insult worse. "Others, you just hope will find their way eventually." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Amanda covered her smile with her champagne glass. Mark had the decency to look uncomfortable, but he said nothing. He never said anything. That was his role, the golden child who benefited from silence. Gloria continued without missing a beat. "But tonight isn't about disappointments. It's about celebrating success. To Mark and Amanda, may your life together be everything you deserve." Glasses raised throughout the room. I raised mine too, my expression carefully blank. Around me, people drank to a toast built on lies, celebrating a success funded by theft, honoring a family that had made me their scapegoat for 3 decades. Later, as guests mingled and conversations broke into smaller groups, Gloria found me in a quiet hallway near the restrooms. Her public warmth vanished the moment we were alone, replaced by the cold efficiency I knew so well. "I need a small favor," she said, her voice dropping. "There's some family paperwork, nothing complicated. I just need you to confirm your phone number and current address, estate planning purposes." I recognized immediately what she was doing. The bank had probably flagged my old contact information as outdated. She needed current details to finalize the loan application scheduled for Monday. Estate planning. I kept my voice neutral. I didn't know we had an estate to plan. Her smile tightened. "Don't be difficult, Erica. It'll take 30 seconds. I'm trying to make sure you're included in things. You could at least be grateful." I held her gaze for a long moment, watching the irritation flicker beneath her composed surface. "I'll think about it." I walked away without waiting for her response. I could feel her stare burning into my back, but I did not turn around. I returned to my table and took a long sip of wine. My hands were steady. My heart was not. She was going to do it. Right here at her son's engagement party, she was going to use me one more time. And she genuinely believed I was too stupid to notice. But the thing about being underestimated your entire life is that you learn to use it. In 2 hours, I would stand up in front of everyone who had ever laughed at me, and I would show them exactly who Gloria Mills really was. The only question was whether I could wait that long. I did not have to wait long. The formal toasts had ended, and guests were mingling freely, champagne flowing, as conversations grew louder. I had almost convinced myself that the worst was over. Then I heard the sharp tap of metal against glass, and my stomach tightened. Gloria stood at the microphone again, her face flushed with wine and self-satisfaction. "Just a few more words from a proud mother," she announced, and the room quieted obediently. Her tone shifted into something performatively emotional. "You know, raising children is the hardest job in the world. You give them everything. You sacrifice your own dreams, and sometimes they disappoint you. But then there are children like Mark and Amanda children who make every sacrifice worth it." Her eyes found me across the room. "I always told my daughter, watch your brother. Learn from him. Maybe some of his success would rub off." She waited for the laughter, and it came right on cue. "I'm still waiting." More laughter, louder this time. Amanda did not bother hiding her amusement. Richard Townsend shifted in his seat, looking uncomfortable, but he said nothing. Gloria raised her glass. "To the children who make us proud, and to hoping the others eventually find their way." The laughter that followed was the loudest yet. Someone nearby muttered, "That's harsh," but the words were swallowed by clinking glasses. I set down my wine. My hands were steady. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. This was the moment. I stood. The movement was unhurried, deliberate. Conversations nearby faltered. Heads turned. The laughter died in stages. Before everyone drinks to that toast, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room, I think there's something you should all know about the success you're celebrating. Gloria's smile froze. Erica, sit down. This isn't the time. Actually, Mom, this is exactly the time. I pulled the folder from my purse. For the past 12 years, you've been committing identity theft. You stole my social security number. You opened accounts in my name. You took out a $400,000 mortgage using my credit. You've stolen over $850,000 from me. Gasps rippled through the room. Somewhere behind me, someone dropped a glass, and shattering crystal punctuated the silence. I continued steadily. But you didn't stop there. You also defrauded Aunt Helen and Uncle Robert, the same elderly relatives who trusted you to help manage their finances. Total theft, $1.2 million. Gloria's composure cracked. This is ridiculous. She's lying. She's always been jealous. I have the bank records. I held up the folder, account numbers, transaction histories, your signature forged in my name on documents I never saw. I turned to Richard Townsend. Judge Townsend, you're welcome to review them yourself. The room went completely silent. Then Mark stood, his voice cracking. Erica, stop. You're destroying our family over some misunderstanding. I turned to face my brother, and something in my expression made him step backward. Misunderstanding. My voice was soft, but somehow more devastating than if I had screamed. You knew Mark. You've known for years. Not just about the old accounts. About everything. I pulled another document from the folder. 3 weeks ago, Mom applied for a new loan. $300,000. In my name. For a house, your wedding gift. The loan officer's notes mention a conversation with you. You confirm details about my employment and income. You helped her. Mark's face crumbled. He looked at Amanda, then at her parents, then at the guests. All he saw was horror and disgust. I didn't think it was that serious, he stammered. Mom said it was temporary, that she'd pay it back. You knew she was stealing from me, I said, and you helped her do it again so you could have a bigger wedding present. That's not a misunderstanding, Mark. That's a choice. Richard Townsend rose, his judicial composure cracking with controlled fury. Amanda, we're leaving. Now. Amanda did not argue. She looked at Mark. Really looked at him, then slowly removed her engagement ring and placed it on the table. I knew something was wrong, she said quietly. I just didn't want to see it. She walked out without looking back. Her parents followed. Gloria found her voice again, shrill and desperate. How dare you? After everything I did for you, I raised you, I fed you, I kept this family together. You raised me to believe I was worthless, I said, so no one would look too closely at what you were doing. You kept me small because you needed someone to stand next to Mark and make him look bigger. I took a breath. And you kept me connected just barely because you needed access to my identity. I was never your daughter, Mom. I was your resource. Gloria lunged toward me, her face twisted with rage. Several guests grabbed her arms. You ungrateful, vicious little... The FBI has been investigating you for 6 months, I said calmly. They'll be at your door Monday morning with an arrest warrant. I could have waited. I could have let them handle everything quietly. I looked around the room at the guests who had laughed at the relatives who never defended me at the wreckage of my brother's engagement. But I wanted you to lose your reputation before you lost your freedom. I wanted everyone who believed your lies to see exactly who you are. I picked up my purse. Enjoy the rest of your party, Mom. It's the last one you'll host for a long time. I walked toward the exit. The crowd parted in silence. Behind me, I heard Gloria screaming at Mark, at the guests, at anyone who would listen. I heard my brother's desperate attempts to explain to salvage something from the ruins. I did not turn around. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. I took a deep breath, the first full breath I had taken in hours. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. How did it go? I typed back. It's done. 3 dots appeared then. How do you feel? I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel satisfied. I felt lighter, like I had set down a weight I did not realize I had been carrying. I typed free. I drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the hum of the engine and my own thoughts. I had just destroyed my family, or rather, I had finally stopped pretending it was not already destroyed. Tomorrow, my mother would be arrested. My brother would face questions about his involvement. The life they had built on stolen money would collapse like the house of cards it always was. And I would wake up for the first time in 35 years as someone who no longer carried their secrets. But I also knew this destruction is easy. What comes after is harder. I had burned down the lies. Now I had to figure out how to build something true. Building something true began with watching everything false collapse. Monday morning, exactly as the FBI had promised, agents arrived at my mother's house at 7 o'clock. I was not there to witness it, but I saw the footage later on the local news. Gloria Mills, 62 years old, being led out of her home in handcuffs, still wearing her bathrobe. The same woman who had stood at a microphone 2 days earlier, mocking her daughter in front of 50 guests, now stumbled down her own driveway while neighbors watched from their windows. The charges were extensive: identity theft, wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. The attempted loan she had been planning to finalize that same Monday added additional counts. The investigation expanded rapidly as agents reviewed her complete financial history. Aunt Helen, 78 years old, and Uncle Robert, 82, were confirmed as additional victims. Gloria had been helping them manage their finances for over a decade, and during that time, she had slowly drained their savings while they trusted her completely. Uncle Robert had been planning to use that money for his wife's medical care before she passed. Aunt Helen had believed she had enough saved for a modest retirement. Both of them had nothing now. The story made local news that evening. Local woman arrested for decade-long identity theft scheme targeting family members. Gloria's photograph appeared on every channel, the same image from her social media, where she was smiling at a charity event. The irony was not lost on me. Mark faced his own reckoning, though his came more slowly. The FBI interviewed him multiple times about his knowledge and involvement. He had not forged documents or opened accounts, so they could not charge him with fraud directly. But he had known. He had helped. And there were laws against that too. Prosecutors offered him a deal, pled guilty to misprision of felony, which meant knowing about a crime and failing to report it. 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service. And he would testify against our mother at trial. He accepted. He had no choice. But the legal consequences were the least of his problems. Within a week, his remaining business clients had fled. The major deal he had been celebrating at the engagement party collapsed completely when his partners learned about the fraud. Amanda's family made it clear through their lawyer that any attempt at contact would result in a restraining order. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation into whether they contained stolen funds. The successful businessman my mother had created was revealed as a fiction. The expensive suits, the confident handshakes, the promising future, all of it had been built on stolen money. Without Gloria propping him up, Mark had nothing. He was 32 years old and starting over with a criminal record, no clients, and a reputation that would follow him for years. 2 weeks after the arrest, he appeared at my apartment building. I recognized him through the security camera before I opened the door. He looked like he had not slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were red. "I need to talk to you," he said when I opened the door. "Please." I did not invite him in. "Talk." "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was wrong. But she's our mother, Erica. She made mistakes, but She stole almost $1 million from me," I said flatly. "She destroyed Aunt Helen's retirement savings. She was going to do it again with your help so you could have a free house. Those aren't mistakes, Mark. Those are choices. Choices you knew about and chose to benefit from." "I didn't know it was that serious." "Stop." My voice was tired, not angry. I did not have the energy for anger anymore. "You knew enough. You knew something was wrong, and you decided that a comfortable life was worth more than your own sister's future. That's the truth. You can accept it or not, but stop pretending you were some innocent bystander." Mark was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. There's nothing left to say." I started to close the door. "Testify honestly at the trial. Accept your probation. Maybe use the next 2 years to figure out who you are without Mom propping you up. But don't come here again expecting me to make you feel better about your choices." I closed the door. Through it, I heard him standing there for a long moment before his footsteps finally retreated down the hallway. A month after the arrest, Gloria called from jail. Her arrogance was stripped away, replaced by something that sounded almost like desperation. "Erica, please. You have to help me. Tell them I'll pay everything back. Tell them it was a mistake. I'm your mother." "Why?" I asked, the question I had been carrying for months. "You had money. Dad's pension, the house your own savings. Why steal from me? Why steal from Helen and Robert? Why risk everything?" Gloria was silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. "I don't know. I just needed to." "That's not an answer." More silence. Then she hung up. That night, I lay awake thinking about my mother. Really thinking for the first time in years. I thought about her constant need to control every narrative, to be the center of every story. I thought about how she treated Mark's dependence as love and my independence as betrayal. I thought about the way her eyes would go cold whenever I succeeded at something without her help. And suddenly it clicked. Gloria did not hate me because I failed. She hated me because I did not. Every time I succeeded without her involvement, I proved that she was not necessary. For a woman whose entire identity was built on being needed, on being the one who held the family together, who managed everything, who controlled everything, my self-sufficiency was not just an insult. It was an existential threat. The identity theft was never about money. It was about control. As long as she had her hands on my financial identity, she was still connected, still relevant, still holding the leash even if I did not know it was there. The realization did not bring peace, but it brought understanding. And understanding, I decided, was enough. 3 months before trial, Gloria's lawyer contacted me with a proposal. If I declined to testify and dropped the civil suit, Gloria would plead guilty to reduced charges and receive 4 to 5 years instead of the potential 12 to 15 she faced at trial. My response was immediate. No. The lawyer tried again. "Ms. Mills, I understand you're angry, but extended litigation is expensive and emotionally draining. A plea deal provides closure for everyone. I'll testify," I said. "I'll answer every question truthfully. I won't ask for the maximum sentence, but I won't help her minimize what she did either. Let the judge and jury hear everything and decide what's fair." I hung up. Justice, I decided, means telling the truth and accepting the outcome. Not revenge, not mercy, just truth. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights. I understood my mother now. Not forgave, but understood. She had spent her whole life needing to be needed, and I had committed the unforgivable sin of not needing her. So she found another way to stay attached, another way to matter. It was sad in a way, a whole life built on the desperate fear of being unnecessary. But understanding does not erase damage, and sadness does not equal forgiveness. She would face the consequences of her choices, and I would face something harder, learning to build a life without the weight of her shadow. For 35 years, I had been defined by what my family thought of me. It was time to find out who I was without them. Finding out who I was without them took time. It took a trial that lasted 3 weeks' testimony that forced me to relive 12 years of betrayal in front of strangers and the slow, painful work of rebuilding everything that had been stolen. But I did it. And now, 18 months after that engagement party, I can finally say that the weight is gone. The trial was harder than I expected. I testified for 2 days, walking the jury through every fraudulent account, every forged signature, every transaction that proved my mother had been stealing from me since I was 22 years old. I spoke with the precision of the financial analyst I am presenting evidence clearly and calmly, even when Gloria's defense attorney tried to paint me as a bitter daughter seeking revenge. But it was Aunt Helen's testimony that broke the courtroom's composure. She was wheeled to the witness stand in a wheelchair, her voice shaking as she described the moment she discovered that the nice savings Gloria had assured her she had were actually gone. "I trusted her," Helen said, tears streaming down her face. "She was family. I never thought family would do this to me. Uncle Robert never got to testify." He passed away 4 months before the trial, his heart giving out in his sleep. The doctors said it was natural causes, but I believe he died of heartbreak. He had trusted Gloria completely, and learning the truth had devastated him. His testimony was read into the record by a court official, his words describing how Gloria had offered to help manage his finances after his wife's death, how grateful he had been for her assistance. He died never knowing the full extent of how thoroughly he had been betrayed. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood and delivered the verdict, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge addressed Gloria directly. Her words stayed with me long after we left the courtroom. "Mrs. Mills, you didn't just steal money. You stole trust. You targeted the people who loved you most, your daughter, your elderly relatives, because you knew they wouldn't suspect you. This wasn't a crime of desperation. This was a crime of calculated betrayal repeated over more than a decade." Gloria was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, 8 years for the fraud and identity theft charges, plus a mandatory 2 years for aggravated identity theft to be served consecutively. She was also ordered to pay $1.2 million in restitution money she would likely never have. I attended the sentencing. I needed to see it end. When the bailiffs led Gloria away in handcuffs, she turned to look at me one final time. I searched her face for something, regret, apology, even acknowledgement of what she had done. But there was nothing. Just the same cold resentment I had seen my entire life. I held her gaze steadily. Then I nodded once, a goodbye, nothing more, and looked away. It was over. Through asset seizure and recovery, I eventually received $620,000 of the stolen funds. The remaining money, over $500,000, was gone forever. Spent over the years on Mark's failing businesses, on Gloria's lifestyle, on the elaborate performance of success that had fooled everyone for so long. I thought carefully about what to do with the recovered money. Part of me wanted to simply invest it all to build the security I had been denied for so long. But another part of me kept thinking about all the women like me, the ones who had to build themselves from nothing because the people who should have helped them chose not to. So I used $100,000 to establish the Second Chance Scholarship Fund, financial support for women from difficult family situations who want to pursue education or career training. I named it not for myself, but for all of us who had been told we were not worth investing in. Every time I receive a notification that another recipient has been accepted, I feel something I cannot quite name. Pride, maybe. Or hope. The rest I invested carefully, and I bought a house. A small one, modest and practical, entirely my own. The mortgage is in my name legitimately this time. When I held the key in my hand for the first time, I stood in the empty living room and cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from the overwhelming sensation of finally having something that no one could take from me. My career continued to grow. I was promoted to Director of Financial Analysis, a position I had earned through years of hard work that my family never knew about. My colleagues, many of whom had followed the trial in the news, treated me with new respect. Not pity, which I would have hated. Recognition. They understood now why I had always been so private, so careful, so determined to succeed on my own terms. Maya, who had supported me through everything, became even more important in my life. We started a tradition of monthly dinners where we talked about everything except family drama. It was Maya who finally convinced me to try therapy, and it was in therapy that I began unpacking 35 years of believing I was not enough. The work is slow. Some days it feels impossible, but I am doing it. Last November, I hosted Thanksgiving at my new house. I called it Friendsgiving because that is what it was. 8 people around my table. Maya colleagues who became friends. Neighbors who became family. I cooked a turkey using my mother's recipe, not out of nostalgia, but because the recipe is good, and good things do not have to be discarded just because they came from bad people. When someone asked about my family, I said simply, "The people who matter are in this room." And I meant it. 6 months after the sentencing, an email arrived from Mark. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. "Erica," he wrote, "I've been in therapy for almost a year now. I'm starting to understand how broken our family was and how much I contributed to that. I was so focused on being the successful one that I never questioned where the success came from. I let Mom use you because it was easier than asking questions. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing because you deserve to hear that I was wrong. You were never the failure. You were the only one of us who actually succeeded at anything real. I hope you're building a good life. You deserve one. I read it 3 times. I did not feel the anger I expected. I did not feel satisfaction either. I just felt tired. Tired of carrying the weight of relationships that were never equal. I did not reply, but I did not delete it either. The door is not open, but it is not locked forever. Maybe someday, years from now, after more therapy, more healing, more proof that Mark has actually changed, there might be something to rebuild. Not today, maybe not ever. But I leave the possibility where I can see it, and I move on. This morning, I sat on the porch of my house with coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over my small garden. I planted tomatoes this spring, something I always wanted to do, but never had space for. They are coming in well. My phone buzzed. A notification from the scholarship fund. Another recipient accepted. Another woman getting a chance to build something new. I smiled. People still ask me sometimes how I could do that to my own mother. I used to try to explain. The theft, the lies, the years of being told I was nothing. Now I just say that I told the truth and she faced the consequences. That is not something I did to her. That is something she did to herself. They ask if I miss having a family. I look at my life, my home, my friends, the work that matters, the people who show up, and I say that I have a family. I just had to build it myself. I am 36 years old. My mother is in prison. My brother is a stranger. The family I was born into does not exist anymore. Maybe it never really did, but I have something I never had before, a life that belongs to me. I spent 35 years waiting for permission to matter, waiting for my mother to see my worth, waiting for my brother to defend me, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell me I was enough. I am done waiting. I do not need their approval. I do not need their apology. I do not need them to finally see what they refused to see for 3 decades. I see it. I know my own value, and I am building a life that reflects it. For the first time ever, being enough for myself is finally enough. Erica's story reminds us of a truth that many women learn too late. Family is not an excuse for abuse, and silence is not the same as loyalty. For years, she believed that enduring mistreatment was the price of belonging. She thought that if she just worked harder, stayed quieter, and expected less, her mother would finally see her worth. But some people are not capable of seeing what they refuse to look for. If you recognize yourself in Erica's story, please hear this. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. The people who truly love you will never ask you to shrink so they can feel bigger. They will never steal your future to fund their present. And they will never make you feel worthless just so someone else can shine. Walking away from toxic family members is not betrayal. It is survival. Building boundaries is not cruelty. It is self-respect. And choosing your own peace over someone else's approval is not selfish. It is necessary. You deserve relationships that lift you up, not ones that require you to stay small. You deserve to be seen valued and celebrated for exactly who you are. And if the family you were born into cannot give you that, you have every right to build a family that will. Thank you for listening to Erica's journey. If her story touched your heart or reminded you of your own experiences, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who was supposed to love you? What helped you find your strength? Share your story with us. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.